Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Books to Last podcast. This episode we're joined by the duo behind Bookshrine podcast, Mary and Lalig. We had a really fun and wonderful time talking about their awesome list of books, and that is why this episode is going to be a little bit different, in that there will be two parts. Just because we just talked about so many things and so many books, and we had so much fun, and I really didn't want you guys to miss out on too much of it. Honestly, yeah, some really fun, wild tangents, but definitely worth it in my opinion, and hopefully yours too. So yes, we're doing books 1, 2, 3 for both of our guests this episode, and then we will do 2 to 5 in the second part, which will come out on our regular schedule, plus honourable mentions. I hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome to Books Last podcast. Would you like to introduce yourselves to our listeners today?
Hi everybody, my name is Lalig. I'm one of the duos from Bookshrine.
And I'm Mary, and I'm the other half.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm so excited to hear your guys' list this week. How are you guys doing today? You been up to anything fun?
Actually, no, today was very relaxing for me. Well, that is fun. So yes, I had fun doing nothing today. How's your day going?
Good. Very busy. I work this morning, which was not fun, but then we built some wardrobes, and that was slightly more fun because I was watching.
Yeah, I worked as well, so I totally understand.
Oh yeah, God, I get that. I wasn't as good this week as I should have been, so I needed to do some catching up, but I'm very excited to be speaking to you guys this evening. It's been something I've been looking forward to all day, well, during my flat pack constructing.
Well, I've been looking forward to it too. I can't wait to talk about the books.
Same.
I can't wait, honestly. So before we get into that awesome list of books, is there anything you guys are reading at the moment, and what you're thinking about it?
I'm actually reading this nonfiction book called The Princess Found. And it's actually about a woman who was adopted in America, and she comes to find out that she's a princess in Africa. So it's like a real life Princess Diary type of thing, but not really, because it's more real and serious stuff that happens in it. But I'm still in the beginning of the book, so I can't really tell you much about it.
I'm not actually reading a book. I was suggested from an article of fan fiction from Warehouse 13. So that is currently what I am reading.
Always, I mean, all reading is reading, and they both sound really interesting and very different from each other. But that's really good. I'm still trying to finish City of Brass myself. I'm so close to the end, and I am really enjoying it. I just can't seem to find the time to.
I have not read that yet, but it's on my list.
It's really good.
Wait to hear about it because I have no idea what it is.
It's a really good book. It's it's a lot of fun. I managed to get a copy because I was reading in the ebook, but I definitely wanted a physical copy once I'd sort of got halfway through because it's really good. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Do you like series or standalone books?
Oh, I kind of like both. So the thing is, I like a standalone book, and then I get to the end of it, and I kind of want more from the characters, and I wish it was a series. But there are some series that I think are too long for me, and if I have to wait for release dates and that sort of thing, my attention kind of shifts, and I fall out of the world, and then I struggle to go back to it. So
that's me. That's me. I struggle a lot to read series.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I was gonna say, it sounds like you guys need to take like a binge watching approach. Just wait till it's done and then discover it.
Definitely. That's what I'm kind of purposely doing with a few series. So like I haven't read the Last Hour series, so that sort of Chain of Gold series by Cassandra Clare yet because I want to finish it, but the third book isn't out yet, so I'm going to wait till that comes out and I'm going to just read them all in one go. But I mean, that happened to me with Throne of Glass and The Dark Artifices by Cassandra Clare. I read all but the last book, and then I had to wait a couple months or even a year for the last book. And then by the time the last book came out, I
Not
kind of,
interested, right?
yeah, I'd made my peace with where the characters had been left. And then I was like, you know what, realistically, they're probably going to have a happy ending. I can accept that. I don't need to know the details.
I get it. I
Yeah.
understand. Waiting is best, but if I like to wait if it's all three or however many books there are. But if it's I read a book and I have to wait a year for the next one, I'm guaranteed not to forget it.
Yeah.
I think I have a different approach just because I read more fan fiction than actual books, and I read them as the author is updating chapters. So it could be someone who's great, updates every week a chapter, or it could be someone who updates every whenever they want. So I'm used to waiting.
But see, when I read fan fiction, I prefer finished fan fiction. I don't like to wait. But it's the same with TV shows. I don't like to wait. I just want to know now.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fan fiction is probably definitely a lesson in patience that I could probably do with taking. I haven't read fan fiction in years just because it was something that I never really got massively into, and weirdly the few fan fictions that I did read were about I think like The Host by Stephanie Meyer, and then I never and maybe Harry
Oh.
Potter. so it was really really specific, but I
Yeah.
recently listened to a podcast. So Potterless podcast was originally about this guy reading all of the Harry Potters for the first time as an adult,
Oh,
because he'd never read them and hadn't really watched many of the films, didn't know anything about them, so it was his reactions to all the books.
how
And then
fun.
it's so funny. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, Potterless is a great podcast. But he moved on to doing like movies and that sort of thing. And then he paired up with a podcast called Fanatical Fix. And they, as a group, like the three of them, read My Immortal, which is this
Oh
really
God.
infamous fan fiction, which I had never heard of or read. But listening to those three sort of describe, so they go through what happens in every sort of, they read X amount of chapters and they go through what happens and in detail. And honestly, it was so funny, not only like the content, but the listening to those guys just listen to it, to read it. It was just, I almost want to read it myself, but based on what they've said about like the spelling and grammar, which they say is intentionally bad because they think it might have been a satire. I don't think I could get through it probably.
Was it a satire though, or is it really bad?
No one knows. No one knows no one knows if it was intentionally bad to somehow make fun of Harry Potter and fan fiction, or whether it was just meant to be, it was good and they thought what they were writing was good, and it just wasn't. No one knows.
That's funny.
But it's some of the choices that they make, sort of intentionally calling characters the wrong names, and the themes and other fandoms they try to like weave into the stories, because it's kind of, most of the characters are vampires but not vampires, but there's a fictional main characters that's not from canon and all that sort of thing. It's just a lot of sort of well-known fan fiction tropes kind of all in
Put together.
one story.
Wow.
And it's just completely wild and goes off in the most ridiculous directions, but it's kind of so bad you have to carry on watching.
Yeah, it's like a train wreck.
Yeah. It's but it was definitely those I think they did it over 6 episodes, and I cried laughing listening to them.
I should definitely listen.
It's so fun. Just honestly, if you only listen to 6 episodes of Potterless, I would probably say listen to those ones. And I feel like the host would hate me for saying that, because to be honest, him going through all of the Harry Potter books was also amazing, but like especially My Immortal was just so funny.
I'm definitely gonna check this podcast out. I'm interested.
Oh, definitely recommend you do. But awesome. So that's what you're reading at the moment. Now we're going to talk about some books that you've read already. For the benefit of any listeners who haven't listened to the podcast before, maybe found it for the first time, Books Last Podcast challenges book lovers to pick the only 5 books they can take with them when cast away forever to a mystery deserted location. Um, our guests, as always, get to pick their mystery deserted location because I am not a monster and I won't force them to go to a deserted island if they don't want to. Um, so, ladies, where will you be cast away to?
Go, Renee. Go first.
I don't know, somewhere in the Caribbean.
It's a good choice.
I would love to be deserted on anywhere in the Maldives. That's my dream.
Excellent.
With a book.
I always love it when we've got exact geography because sometimes guests come with a very specific country and even place in mind where they want to go, and others create their own geography from a country that doesn't exist.
That's cool too.
with things that can't possibly exist next to each other, but they do. Excellent. So whereabouts what do you think you'll be staying in the Caribbean / Maldives? Is it on the beach
I'd be in a bungalow on the ocean, on the water. Like, you know, one of those paradise videos that you see on social media. I want that.
That sounds ideal.
I would definitely be on a house on the beach. Like, it has a beachfront, but it also has like its own swimming area inside the house. Because even though I like the beach, I don't want to get in the beach because there's critters. So I want my own private swimming, bug, and aqua life free area.
Yeah, bungalows have those, and they have slides into the ocean.
Well, I want to slide into a pool.
I'm with you on that one. I'm not a huge sea and beach fan myself, although honestly, with the last 18 months, I think I'd go literally anywhere if it wasn't my house.
Fair.
And I would love to swim with sharks. So.
Oh no.
Yeah, you're alone there.
I would.
Oh no, I don't do the sea. Although I will be the first to admit that I don't think sharks are the scariest thing in the sea whatsoever.
They're not, and I think they're so gorgeous.
I went to aquarium last week and they had sort of sharks in this, like, you go through the tunnel and then the tank is around you and they're swimming around you, and there was like stingrays that actually looked really cool because they kind of like skimmed over the top of the tunnel and stuff. They're nice when there's a lot of glass
separating you.
And you don't have to be like in the sea. They're nice then. Well, we've got our locations picked out, and now it's just a case of sharing the books that you want to take there. Whichever you would like to go first, would you like to share your first book with us?
So I can start. This was one of the most difficult tasks anybody has ever given me in my entire life. I just want to put that out there. So I was like, how am I supposed to do this? Because I can never choose. So I decided to go with genre because I was like, okay, I can break this down easier. So my first one, I wrote fantasy. And I know, don't judge me, I know there's a lot of amazing fantasies out there. But this year I read one that has stuck with me and I'm waiting for the second book for it. And it's called The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. And I would love to be able to read that book again for the first time. So I decided it's my fantasy choice.
It's a really good one. I've heard lots of really good things. It's unfortunate not one I've been able to get around to myself, but I know it's got this stunning cover and all of the editions are just amazing. For anybody who hasn't read it yet, can you give us a little summary of what it's about?
Yeah, so The Gilded One is about women who turn 16. They have to go to this purification or blood ceremony where they have to bleed. And if they bleed gold, then they're casted away and they're looked upon as demons, and they're often gotten the death mandate. but if you bleed red, then you're normal. So it's about this girl who obviously she bleeds gold, and she is cast away, and she has to find a way. Well, she kind of goes to the king. She starts training with the women who are all cast away because they're all bleeding gold, and she starts training to help the kingdom who is actually doing this to her in the first place. So it's kind of a amazing story about women who are fighting patriarchy but still doing it as like casted demons. It's an amazing fantasy book, I think.
It does sound amazing. And I find I mean, I'd love to bleed gold. Bleeding red is so boring.
I agree.
That sounds so much cooler. It sounds really fun. So, is there a lot of, I mean, is what's the world building like? Is it sort of a world very removed from ours? And that's I would imagine
I
so.
it's the world is I literally the first thing I remember when I read the book, I was thinking how the world is so beautiful and I would love to visit. It's like one of the places is high up on an island and surrounding all water, but it's like the place you never want to live in, but it sounds so beautiful because as a woman you don't want to live in that society. But the way the author is describing the world, it's so lush and beautiful and green that you actually want to go there.
That sounds awesome. How many books are supposed to be in the series? Is it going to be a duology,
I
trilogy?
think it's supposed to be a trilogy, and the second book is coming out this year. And I know in the beginning I said I don't do series, but this is a series I'm actually waiting for. And I'm excited to read the second one. Should be coming out this year, 2021.
Oh, that sounds really great. Mary, have you read the Gilded Ones? Have you got any thoughts?
Yes, actually. So I wasn't expecting this. So to speak to how well I know her, I knew this would be on her list. I wasn't expecting it to be her first choice, but okay, we'll work with that.
I'm
And
going genre. It's not first, second. This is
well,
this, in no
I mean,
order.
I wasn't expecting you to mention it first, but the
Okay.
point here is that this is also on my list, and this is why I knew we would have similar books because I actually enjoyed the book as well.
I didn't expect this at all.
I mean, based on our conversation before, I wasn't really expecting this either. So that's really interesting. So why is it on your list as well? What about this book stood out to you so much that it made such a wide impression?
So I don't really read fantasy. Because I find fantasy, when I think about fantasy, I think about like Harry Potter, Twilight, and Game of Thrones, and all of those books are massive. And there's not to say that I don't like massive books, but like after I look at the series as it's already done, and I think of how many words I have to read, it just kind of puts me off from reading it. But this one, I listened to the audiobook, which is what I do for most of the books. After she told me about it on our podcast episode, and it was really intriguing. I thought that the world seemed very interesting, and I'm like, a bunch of women fighting against man. Yeah, I'm there. Just give it to me. And it was a great book.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. I mean, what's the audiobook like? Is the narrator, I mean, I really love Audible because the narration quality is just so amazing.
Yeah. I agree.
The audiobook was actually really good. I'm pretty sure it was just one, like I read books where there's multiple narrators, but this one I believe was one who did all the parts, and they were easily distinguishable. They had, the different voices to tell who was who. And I like the way that they did. So in this world, there's creatures that aren't real. And I like the way that they voice some of those creatures. I don't know if in the physical book, maybe the spelling of some of the dialogue
EQ?
from those creatures. The who?
Is it the EQUU creature? I can't say that. Or are you talking about the Death Streaks? Okay. How did they say it in the book? I mean, on the Audible.
Well, I don't remember at the moment, but I don't think you pronounced it right the first time.
No.
But that's the lovely part about audio. I know how it's pronounced, and she's like, it's spelled like this. And I'm like, I don't know what that is.
I can relate to this conversation a lot because I only recently discovered audiobooks, and I generally listen to like non-fiction books on audiobooks. um sometimes fiction as well, but a lot of books that I read growing up, I would be made fun of by sort of friends and family because I could not pronounce some of the words in it because I'd never heard them out loud. I'd only ever
Yeah.
seen them written down. And I would just come up with the most absurd pronunciations because I was just like, well, that's the letters that are in the words. So I'm using
I
all the letters.
I know the struggle all too personally.
So yeah, I completely relate to that. But the audiobooks are useful for that. And it is really good when you've got a narrator who is
Knowledgeable.
yeah, and really like good at characterization
Yeah.
because if they can really stick to a way of characterizing each one and they stand out from each other because obviously I don't know, I don't do voices for different characters when I'm reading the books, but because I'm the one reading it, it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. But
Yeah.
if someone's reading it to me, it's going to get really confusing if they can't be consistent with the way they characterize each character in the book. So that's really good. I'll have to check that out. I need to start using Audible more because I constantly find myself doing things with my hands that like just housework and stuff like that that isn't really engaging my mind, and there's no reason I can't be listening to an audiobook. So I really need to get into the habit of keeping them
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
perfect for that.
going.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like
Well,
to listen to Audible when tending my plants. I
oh,
love listening.
that just sounds so idyllic. Like
It is. It's heaven.
I keep saying every time I get into the car, so I do a lot of driving for inspections for work, and I'll be in the car for like a couple of hours in the day, but I just every time I get in the car, I say I'm going to listen to an audiobook, and then I end up listening to podcasts because
Oh, yeah.
because I can't. I it's like as there's a very fine line in between how engaged I need to be with the contents,
Yeah.
and if I'm
Yep.
gonna just zone into driving, I don't want to be doing it in the middle of a really good book.
Yeah. When I'm driving, I like podcasts when I am working because I'm a graphic designer as well. So when I'm editing and all that, I love listening to books, ebooks.
Yeah, it's nice to have both. I can't wait. The one thing I've really missed about my commute because I've been working from home is my reading and personal
Yeah.
time that I get on the train. There's just my time, and there's no dogs or husbands or colleagues that need my help
Yeah.
or assistance. So,
Or asking questions.
oh yeah, where's
The
this?
break.
Where's this thing that I know I should know where it is, but I don't.
Where's the thing that I put?
Yeah. Literally, and I mean that applies to all of them. My dog is constantly putting his toys underneath our sofas, and he knows where they are, but he can't get to them. So he comes to tell me that he's put them
Aw.
and I have to go and get them. So yeah, anyway, so a shared choice for the first book, which was unexpected. I wonder if we'll
Yeah.
have any more crossovers.
I
Well,
doubt it for real this time. That's it.
for real,
Yes.
we don't think we're gonna have another crossover.
No, no,
but
this is it.
we're not gonna rule it out. So, Lalig, what is your second choice for
Okay.
your books if we're going by genre?
Okay, so this one is way out of like left field, and you guys are gonna be like, what? So I love historical books, like legitimately history, things that are primary sources or source books or anything that comes from the original writings. So for this one, I chose a book called The History of Sexuality source book, and it's edited by Matthew Kuffler. I think that's how you say his name. It's a book, it's a source book that actually goes way back from ancient to medieval to modern, and it goes from all the countries. It goes from like Asia to Africa, Europe, and to the Americas, and it talks about obviously the sexuality, and it goes into the religious, religious, legal, political, and any of the texts that come from history. And why I love this book is that it shows me, I mean, I still have my notes on it, but it literally shows me that any of these new concepts that people think are new is really not. It comes back from ancient times. And I just love this book. It has so many different sources in it, and a lot of broken down texts that come from like 1500s, and they're talking about transsexuals and transgenders, and it's just beautiful for me because it's not a new concept and people need to know that.
That sounds really fascinating. I mean, I haven't read the book, but I get incredibly irritated with people who kind of dismiss a lot of what's coming, I suppose, to the forefront of the general discussion about sexuality, because as I don't know, newfangled fads and all that sort of thing, that is, I don't know, almost like they think millennials and Generation X
Yeah.
have invented them.
Or
And
they think it's just something because quote unquote we're woke and we're trying to do things
yeah,
out of the ordinary, but it's like no, it's just now we refuse to be hidden, and this is it. And this book literally proves that this has been going on for a longer than even Christianity. So
yeah, I think yeah, I love it when people dismiss things as made up or not real. It's like, please define real for me.
yeah,
For me.
yeah.
What does that even mean? Well, that sounds, I mean, what are we talking about sort of length on this book if, say, someone wanted to pick it up because they were interested in the subject matter? Because I mean, I will admit, sort of history and nonfiction texts, I am kind of boring in
That's
in my
fair.
exploration of
Yeah.
that area.
So this book is about like 450 pages.
Okay, so
And
not enormous by
mm,
history book standards.
oh no, not at all. Well, it is kind of bigger than your usual. Like it the size of it is bigger than your usual book that's behind you right now that I'm looking at. But yeah, but I would say it's like a textbook, about 430 to 450 pages. But there, like I said, there's primary sources in it. So it's not like you're reading a nonstop of continuation stuff. Like one of them would be about 5th century BCE, and then it moves on to the 10th century, and it's each of them is just talking about different things. So you don't have to read every single one if you don't want to. It's just the sources and the primary sources that you take from it. You can just go through it.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, does it pull, I mean, are the sources from, I suppose, presumably all over the world as well as across
Yes.
different times?
Yes.
That sounds really fascinating. It's something that I would be interested in checking out just because, yeah, it's always good to be more educated. It's not something I say I've necessarily read a lot about, but I definitely would be interested in knowing a bit more.
There's quite a few sexuality source books or historical books that I had to like choose from, but I think this one has the most to give.
Excellent. And it will be joining the Gilded Ones
Yeah.
in your stack of books. Mary, what will be the second book that will be joining you and the Gilded Ones?
So I also did genre because
Oh,
yeah, it
we're
was.
too like.
I mean, this has been 11 years of friendship, so I think yeah,
True.
we should be. But so my second book, which is weird for me to say because it is a romance,
What?
and yeah, I have like this love-hate thing with romance. So, but romance is a lot that I read because of fan fiction. A lot
Yeah.
of the fan fiction is romance, so I could get it. And the reason that this, even though this one is a book, it correlates with fan fiction because the writer or the author was a fan fiction writer that I followed into her book. So this one is called The Wrong McElroy, and it's by K.L. Hughes.
Never
And
heard of it.
this is basically the story of these two friends. One has to go to his southern family's home for a vacation, which I can't recall which one. And he wants to bring a date because, you know, family, after you get to a certain age, family is like,
Oh
who are
yeah.
you dating? When you're going to get married? You're going to bring home some kids type of thing. So he has a fake relationship. He brings his best friend and they pretend to have a relationship. And normally in like fake relationships, obviously the two get together for real, but no, because this one is an LGBT book, his friend and the fake relationship ends up with the sister.
I don't hate it. That sounds like a good twist.
Yeah, that's why I picked it, because it was like a fake relationship where they don't get together. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't quite like the fake dating trope. I don't know why I like it.
Me too.
I,
A
just,
lot.
I could not for the life of you tell you why I like it, but I do.
Yeah.
Because realistically, it's stupid, but in a book, it's amazing.
It's stupid and no one does it. It's
Yeah.
not something that anyone's ever considered doing to fix their problems in real life. But in a book, it just creates excellent areas of
Fun.
Yeah,
Fun.
always.
No,
always
I totally get it. Like my favorite, like, so that is one of my favorite romance tropes when I have to read it. But everyone in every fandom I've ever read in redoes The Proposal, that movie. And it's like my favorite story from every fandom whenever they redo it.
I still think The Proposal is a rendition of a book.
I mean, it could be. I don't.
Because The Proposal came out around 2008.
Is The Proposal the one with Ryan Reynolds and
Yes.
Yeah, I do like that film. I actually watched that recently, I think.
I love that movie. It's so funny, especially when she sings 369 Damn You're Fine. No, nobody? To the walls, to the window? Nobody?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is funny. The grandma's really funny in that as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fake dating. I do find it just a really fun interest. Although ironically, I don't know, I've read some romance series recently, and I think I ended up skipping that particular trope in this series because I didn't want to read those characters. Not badly enough to read the trope anyway, but tell us a little bit more about the book. I mean, where is it set in particular?
So it's a modern day book. I think it came out in like 2017. So I'm assuming that's like the setting of this particular book. It's on a farm in the South. So we do have those characters that's a bit problematic for any LGBT type relationship in the South. There's a grandma who is just like not accepting. And I think the way that this author wrote that character was pretty realistic, and it was well done. And that was generally the fear of the characters to come out, because they all were essentially in the closet to this family. The friend obviously was she out and proud in her real life, but for this particular family, she had to be dating their son.
Yeah.
And the daughter, who she ends up having this crush on, is also in the closet. So they had to go through the whole coming out scene, and I think that it was well written and realistic, something that you can imagine, even though it didn't have a horrible ending for the friends and the children.
That's really interesting. I mean, we talk about the, I suppose, fake dating trope and how they sort of usually end up together, but I find it interesting to be used as like a vehicle to hide, so like as a way for someone to hide their sexuality, I suppose, around their family. I don't think I've ever actually read it used like that, although it does kind of seem like it would be an obvious, I suppose, choice for that. But I mean, is it generally, despite, I suppose, I mean, coming out and that sort of thing can be quite heavy subject matter, is it quite a light, fun sort of book most of the time, or is it does it sort of get quite serious?
So for the most part, it's definitely a lighter book, because the early chapters really deal with the friend trying not to expose her crush on the younger sister. And throughout this, she's trying to show that she's in this full relationship with their son and that she's engaging in family activities because they have this snowball fight. So I do think it's Christmas. They have a snowball fight which gets super intense, and it's really light and fun until you get to the very end where secrets are exposed, which also happened in a very, I mean, not fun, but funny way.
Like lighter way.
Yeah.
It's not as dramatic. It's just a
classic. Is it like classic miscommunication? All the secrets get sort of just tumbled out in one big.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
One big showcase. They all come out at once, as opposed to sort of trickling out over a longer period of time. That, I mean, is it part of a series, did you say?
No, this was just a standalone, but I wouldn't mind reading more about the characters, like seeing them actually form this relationship more than this initial crush and lusting.
But would you actually read a book now that, like, the development of their relationship? Because that's not the type of book I thought you liked to read.
I probably would, just because I know the author. Like, I've read them before.
Oh, what did you say the author's name was again, just so I can make a note and check her out?
It is K.L. Hughes.
And they started out in fan fiction, you said?
Yeah, she started out writing fan fiction. She actually, she did the thing which I kind of don't like and like at the same time.
Oh yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
Where she made one of her stories an actual book.
And changed the names.
Yeah, but it wasn't, we talked about it being very, so this was Once Upon a Time. So we talked about it being like just changing the city from Storybrooke to Noveltown, but this was more so, had nothing to do with fairy tales or anything, just two women falling in love. And again, a modern setting. Nothing to do with the actual fandom. Yeah, an alternative author's universe, or AU as we call it.
A lot of authors seem to, a lot of really big authors that have made quite a lot of money seem to have come from like a background of fan fiction in very specific genres. And I do find it, I suppose, I don't know, when you're writing fan fiction, it is still writing, and it's a way to sort of develop your own story ideas, but I suppose you're kind of playing in the safety of somebody else's world that's already got all of this sort of structure built around it. But I mean, Cassandra Clare, I know The Mortal Instruments was just Harry Potter fan fiction, which when someone told me that, it kind of blew my mind, because I didn't know that, because I didn't know she'd come from a fan fiction background. And when I actually looked back on the series afterwards, and they said, oh yeah, no, she wrote a Harry Potter fan fiction starring Draco, and if you actually look at the characters, Jace is Draco and such and such and such and such, and I was like, oh my god, I can see it. I was like, yeah, no, like, she's obviously put her own twist, and they've grown outside of that sort of character, but I can definitely see the roots there. And I've not read 50 Shades of Grey, but I do know that it comes from Twilight fan fiction, which, I mean, just with the broad strokes of what I know about it, I wish I could say I was surprised. I love...
Have you read them? Just honestly.
Okay, so I like Twilight, and I've read all of Twilight.
Me
I
too.
have not read 50 Shades of Grey, but I've heard parts of it, because I think I've told this story on the podcast before. There was a girl in my class in high school. We went on a school trip to Germany, and she was reading 50 Shades of Grey while we were on this trip. And at one point, I have a very, really vivid memory of us all sat, because we used public transport to get around, and we were sat on a train going through Berlin, and she was reading out loud passages of 50 Shades of Grey. And I mean, there were about 50 people from our class on this train, alongside all of the locals who live in Berlin and undoubtedly speak better English than we speak German, and our teachers. So I remember being kind of horrified, but also in awe of the competence and complete unabashed way that this 16-year-old was reading 50 Shades of Grey out
That's
loud.
so funny.
So yeah, parts of it, not one that I've read or seen the films. Yeah, my mum read them, and I think that made me not want to read them on print.
Yeah,
Um,
that'll do it.
Now, I actually have read all of the Twilights, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved the Twilight series. Not the
I do,
movies,
yes.
not the movies, but the book. Because in the movies, you know how they just keep staring at each other, but the book
Yeah.
actually just explains the emotions, like why they're staring or what's going through their mind. That's
Yeah.
why I like, well, that's why I like books in the first place. But it's just the funniest thing ever how sucky the movie is.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the only highlight of those movies is Taylor Lautner shirtless for the majority of the last three.
Yes.
Just
But I have read 50 Shades of Grey, or the first book, and I can tell
I
you,
didn't know that.
I did. Well, I couldn't finish it. It's just not
Oh.
something that was enjoyable. It was just screaming abuse to me, not
yeah,
the type of relationship that a BDSM should have, but more like you're gonna do what I tell you and I'm gonna hurt you. And that's abuse. That's not how it works.
yeah. I've seen a lot on the internet about, and it's a very valid point that, if Christian Grey was not an attractive, wealthy white man, what he was doing
Is
would be
abuse.
it would be like 50 Shades of Grey would be a trauma story and a survivor's story, whereas because he's just drips privilege from his every pore, it's considered sexy for some reason.
Yeah, and it's not.
And it's not. And yeah, no. And I've read some kind of some interesting sort of like satirical parts where it's just like they kind of switch up the setting and they switch up him and just with a few very minor tweaks, it goes from being this, and the thing is, a lot of people I know who really love the series, it makes them kind of uncomfortable to sort of be confronted with that, but if you don't have to change much. Not that, I mean, if someone enjoys that, but those series, that's obviously entirely their choice. I know not everyone is a big
Of
fan of
course.
Twilight, and I enjoy Twilight. I personally would try. I mean, I had an English teacher who despised Twilight with like a burning passion. She once had like a few pages of it photocopied for us to go through and criticize the writing because she really did not like it. But I kind of had to. You don't. I think there are some books that you read for their literary prowess, and I think there's some you read because you just like the characters and the story, and you don't need like
the story.
Yeah, I think you don't need everything. And I just think Twilight's one of those stories, and I have a bit of a soft spot for it, and it's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine, even though I know
Twilight has problematic stuff in
Yeah.
it too, especially with oh my god, I forgot his name in the book. The
Jacob?
Taylor. Yes, Jacob
Yeah.
and the baby Renesmee.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. It's just all wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's like a problem early on though, because like it's actually kind of hinted at and foreshadowed with one of the other pack members and a little girl called
Yeah.
Claire, and oddly that's always the first thing that kind of jumps to the like conversation. But I mean, I've recently sort of talked about this with a few friends of mine who, again, they like the series, but they've kind of had to come to terms with some of the problems in it.
Yeah.
And they talk about sort of, I mean, the way that the Queelite, I can't pronounce, Queelite tribe is portrayed, because that's like that's an actual tribe of people.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's from the general area.
Oh,
and
that's messed up.
yeah, the way that like their, I suppose, law and everything's just been completely stolen basically, and
Yeah.
turned into something that is not
No.
anything resembling, like even remotely resembling the actual. It's just kind of very insensitive. And then on top of that, and something that it's not even crossed my mind, but a friend of mine pointed out that there is a part when Jasper sort of explains his past where he sort of very proudly states that he was a Confederate soldier and never expresses any remorse for it.
Why don't I remember that?
Because you block out the negative.
I guess. Oh, I was also 15.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I was probably 13, 14 when I read the book. So these weren't things that I was aware of. I had didn't really use the internet back then. But it's something that I've kind of learned as I thingy. So they're not a series that I've revisited, but like I say,
Me
still
neither.
I have a bit of a soft spot because I suppose the time and life that I came across them, but I've had to sort of, I don't know. I think you make your own with the books, that you sort of take the parts that you like about them, and I think as long as you can sort of confront the more problematic areas.
I mean, also the whole
That's fair.
Edward being 300 years old coming back for a 16-year-old is also problematic. I think the
Yeah.
whole book is problematic, but it's also something, like you said, it's kind of nostalgic because
Yeah.
I read when I was younger.
Yeah, well, now that you're older, you realize what's problematic and you can actually analyze it from a 30-year-old's point of view instead of a 14 or 15-year-old
Yeah.
who didn't have those experience, didn't realize those things were a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, as long as I suppose the discussion's had and it's not all just pushed under the carpet, I suppose it's always a good thing
Yeah.
to have. Excellent. So we've done books 1 and 2. What is the third book that is going to be joining you guys in your mystery well, not so much a mystery anymore, location?
So my third one has the one of the best genres I think in my life I've ever read, which is true crime. And I would recommend, well, I love this book. It's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it's the one woman's obsessive search for the Golden State Killer by Michel McNamara. So this book is about the Golden State Killer who pretty much reigned terror in Northern California and SoCal, Southern California. And he did about 10 gruesome murders. So not only would he murder, but he would also rape people. And a lot of the time he was able to just get away from police and detectives. So for 3 decades, no one knew who he was until 2019. And unfortunately, Michelle McNamara died before he was caught, and she died before the book was fully finished. But her husband finished the book for her and published it, and he was caught and he's actually in jail right now.
Mm.
So I think this book is a very bittersweet book in a way that she spent decades trying to find out who this guy is and help the detectives and law enforcement, but she didn't really finish her life goal because she passed away unexpectedly. But it's bittersweet that her husband finished her work for her. And not only that, the guy was actually caught and is in prison right now.
Yeah. I think true crime's never been something that I've been hugely into. But it's something that I've actually I'm listening to a lot more. It's not something that I ever got into, mainly because I'm kind of I'm a bit sensitive to certain content, and I find it seems to be prevailing in a lot of true crime. But a previous guest of the podcast and very good friend of mine has a true crime podcast with her 2 friends called Murder Moses, and the 3 of them, they're in Texas, and they talk about true crime basically every week, and the 3 of them make it palatable for me. So when I listen to it, I don't get nightmares, and I get to sort of, they have a great conversation about it generally, and it is actually really, really interesting to see how these kind of things happen. I suppose it seems so bizarre, like, I mean, that it took until 2019, but I mean, when you think about the history of, I suppose, DNA and I suppose developments in CCTV and surveillance, I suppose there's a lot of difference in 30 years, but it's scary, very scary, that someone could get away with it for that long.
Yeah, but I do believe that he was found because of the DNA, excuse me, the genealogy thing that's been happening in the last few years, where people are not donating, they're testing their own DNA to figure out who they are. I think it's amazing that something as simple and simple as that is helping law enforcement catch those bad people.
Yeah, I will add there that it's not just DNA testing, you actually have to opt in to a different system. Like you upload your DNA test to a separate service and opt in for it to be public knowledge so the police can have that access to your database. So I don't want anyone who's like thinking about taking a DNA test, like, oh no, I don't want the police to find whoever. But yeah, no, it's, you know, not quite like that. But yes,
not automatic.
Genealogy in that case.
I'm the opposite too. I'm like, I should take the test just to see who gets caught.
I actually got a DNA test, like an ancestry one for Christmas.
How fun. You did.
Yes, my husband got it me because I've been interested about that just for a long time, and I've already sent one off, but then there was an issue with it, so they sent me another one for free, and I need to do it again. But my problem is you have to not eat or drink for like an hour before, and I keep forgetting that I'm supposed to do that.
Why not do it in the morning? You wake up.
Yeah, that's really what I should do, because every time I like remember, it's like as I'm like eating something or drinking something, I go, I need to do that thing.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but I'll get around to it eventually. But yes, true crime's an interesting one, and there is a lot of books published about true crime. Is it so is it kind of like a journal of her own investigation, or is it and more of a narrative, I suppose?
Well, it's more of it is more of a narrative, but it has the point of view of the detectives. Okay, I'm going to tell you one story about this detective called Paul Hall. His name is Paul Hall. Mm-hmm. I didn't just make that up. So he was on this case for years, and he's also in the book. And he actually has a podcast now too, but that's side note. So he was trying to figure out this guy, and the day he retired, he ended up he's got some information of who the Golden State Killer might be. So the day he was retiring, he went and parked in front of that guy's house, and he debated if he should go talk to him. But because he was retiring, he said, it's okay, like they'll take care of it. And he left and he retired. And then the whole genealogy thing happened, DNA. And then he ended up helping solve the case, even though he was also retired. So it's just an amazing book of bunch of people who literally fought decades to fight this guy, who literally brutalized people. That he would go into people's homes and hurt, like, you know, I don't want to go into details, but it wasn't nice at all. And it was brutal, and people would die, and then nobody knew what it was, because it was in NorCal, and then it started happening in SoCal, so nobody knew it was related. But they come to find out at the end that it's all related. It's all one guy who did that.
I always found it odd about the Golden State Killer that he went into homes where there were couples there. Like, it wasn't just the one person he wanted. It was actually
he would tie it, yeah.
And I thought that was very bold of him, but then to find out he was ex-cop made sense.
Well, I was just going to say that. They always suspected that he might be in some kind of law enforcement, and that turned out to be true.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm sorry, is this too much for you?
No, I'm just thinking, I wish it was more shocking to me that he was, you know, in law enforcement. I just, with some recent things that have happened here in the UK, specifically with police officers abusing their access to things, it's just really, it's just, I can't even think of it. It's disgusting, probably. Yeah, it's probably the word I'm looking for. That's sort of where that comes from. I always find sort of, I mean, I suppose that's why true crime has this huge like phenomenon and sort of, I suppose, following around it, because serial killers in particular are kind of fascinating, because despite how sort of well-known they become, they're actually exceedingly rare for someone to kill multiple people who, especially that they don't know, because the majority of murders are people both committed by people who know the victim. So it's kind of, it's always like serial killers are actually incredibly rare, but it's weird that they're kind of the, you know, poster for true crime, but I suppose because they're so rare, that's what makes them so sort of fascinating. It just kind of reminds me of I recently saw another true crime book being advertised in a local bookstore called A Passion for Poison. which is about a British serial killer who I think it was like over his entire life, he was there. It was decades. He, as a child, sort of dabbled with poisons, and he sort of practiced sort of poisoning his family to see how long or doses, and he kept detailed sort of diaries, and he just carried on doing it throughout his entire life, killing people by accident, and it never got traced back to him. And it took, even now they still don't know how many people he actually killed.
Wow. Is it
um
by Janice Del Negro and
it's
somebody
called, I think it's
else?
by Carol Ann
Oh,
Carol Ann Lee. It's called A Passion for Poison. um and yeah, he's I think he was known as like the teacup poisoner or
wow.
something in the UK, and he didn't like that name because it wasn't appropriately scary for him. He was had problems, obviously.
Well,
I think
It's
I
that's
can't.
what the appeal is to serial killers is not just because, you know, yes, they're rare, but also it's the thinking, like what in their mind made them do the things that they did, like what actions in their childhood might have brought out this thing. Was it not anything that happened to them, and it was just like something innately inside of them? And that's always been a thing for humans that want to
Fascinating.
understand the inner workings of the odd thing.
yeah, it's
It's
the
fascinating. It's fascinating to see like what triggers them. What it's not that I'm interested because it's cool, but it's just like what is wrong with you? I would like to know.
yeah,
And how
it's
can I avoid creating somebody like you in the future?
well, that's just it, isn't it? It's the nature versus nurture sort of a discussion, as well as people kind of have a morbid curiosity of I mean, most people would sort of sit and listen to these stories and think, how could anyone possibly do that? But also they're kind of intrigued to know what separates them as a person from someone who does do those things. Like,
Yeah.
what is the difference? And it is a fascinating discussion. I really I like sort of hearing about the full story, but I think I've found I like the ones where I suppose you get the just ending where they get captured and um that sort of
Oh,
thing
you
at the
don't do
end.
cold cases.
Yeah, oh no, the
Yeah, I
cold
would say
case.
then.
Yeah, cold case. So my nan loves like crime shows. Like
Yeah.
I watched so much CSI and Law and Order growing up, and she used to
Same.
watch a show called Cold Cases,
Yeah.
and they were horrible because they never had a good ending.
I mean, it's called cold cases. It's not,
It
there's
was,
no ending.
I mean, they were always like fictional, and I think sometimes a lot of the time they actually solved them, but the thing is, they always sort of showed the crime at the beginning, and it was always like years and years and years before, and then it's them revisiting and like going at down thinking,
Speculating.
and it is entirely like fictional. But I just remember I mean, some of them in particular. There's one that's like stuck in my mind now, even now, and it's been like probably easily 10-15 years since I watched it. Of just like, yeah, just the imagery and all that sort of thing. And I tend to do, yeah, I do better with captured serial. So I might be all right with I'll Be Gone in the Dark because it
Yeah.
gets finished, and she had a
Well,
very lovely husband who finished her book for her.
that's what I was gonna say though. This was a cold case up until 2019.
Mm.
Like I think it was 2019 or 2018, but I'm pretty sure 19. But it's just oh, it was published 2018. So okay, so 2018. Um, it's just amazing how 3 decades of a cold case was solved because somebody just ended up trying to find out who they are with their DNA. And then, like Renee said, shared their results with everybody. It's not
Yeah.
just, it's not automatic, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, obviously part of the appeal with serial killers is usually the fame and being known for what they did, which is why I always get irritated when the news broadcasts that a serial killer
Yeah.
has died or something in prison, because we've got a few more infamous cases in the UK where the perpetrators have died in prison recently because they've reached that age. And it's very much, and then because of that, you then get the recovering of the story and that sort of thing. It's like those families are probably still alive. Can you just, I mean, they get to know, but does this person need to be any more famous than they already are?
That's
That's
kind
the
of how it is here, though. We have like documentaries on Ted Bundy every year or something. Like,
or a movie, and they're trying to make him seem like Like, why are they
Yeah.
trying to, what's the word? They're trying to,
Humanize him.
Romanticize him.
yeah,
Or that.
romanticize. That's exactly the word. And it's like, no, he was an evil person. Like, don't do that. Which, by
Yeah.
the way, a runner-up was another book, not I'll Be Gone in the Dark. It's by Anne Rule, who was friends with Ted Bundy. Oh, The Stranger Besides Me. That was a runner-up for me because it's about Ted Bundy. And Anne Rule wrote it when she was like best friends with him and had no idea who Ted Bundy really was.
Scary. No.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
shuddered. That's oh god, no. The thing is, romanticizing Ted Bundy, that's going to happen when you cast Zac Efron as him,
Yeah.
and I don't know what they were thinking. Really, he's an excellent actor. He is, but like,
Don't put
I
cute people.
yeah, I saw a tweet or something, and it was someone was just tweeting just like I keep on seeing about how everyone says that Ted Bundy was fine, and I keep seeing it, and you know what, I'm done being silent. He was not, he's not. And it posted some photos, and you know what, I've never seen any photos of him because it's not, I've not watched the documentary or the film or that sort of thing, but I was like, yeah, no, I agree. That's not a good looking man. And the fact that you know what he did makes him even less
Yeah.
attractive.
Yep.
But the only thing that I disagree is that unfortunately Ted Bundy was a good looking white man, and that is how he played everybody around him in the first place.
I suppose,
So sorry.
yeah, he wasn't the classic picture of what people thought serial
Yeah,
killers were. But I mean,
exactly.
yeah, I think there were, it's just, oh, yeah, no, it's just yeah, another interesting sort of, I suppose, character study.
Yeah.
If you can use that terminology. But
But I'm sure Zac Efron did do that. Had to watch a lot of court cases and
yeah.
watch Ted Bundy because he was in the line, like he was in the spotlight when he was doing all the horrible things he was doing.
Mm.
And he would just smile to the camera and be very charming. And that is the scariest part.
Yeah.
Somebody so charming is, I was gonna say is usually not a good person, but that's not that, I don't mean that. But just it's crazy that I shouldn't use that word. I'm sorry. It's just out of this world that a person can fake it that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like it's sort of mind blowing that yeah, charm can hide a lot.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think I have any serial killers in my acquaintance. However, I am often amazed by what charming young men are able to do and get away with.
Yeah.
Purely because they know the right way to talk.
And just smile.
Yeah. But hopefully moving away from scary Ted Bundy.
I don't know what she chose.
What is the third book that will be joining your list, Mary?
So I don't know if we just had like some type of mind syncing.
No. No.
I didn't pick true crime.
Okay.
But I did pick a mystery suspense book.
Okay.
And this one more so, well, first, this one is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. And it's a kind of a 2-in-1. You have the chapters with Maggie, which is the daughter. She's grown. She's going back to this house that her father wrote a book about as being haunted. So when she was a child, they lived there for about 7 days. And these mysterious things, according to the book, happened. And the father wrote it off as being a haunted house. And that's kind of what made the book, or his book, famous, and that house famous. When the father passed away, she went back to, well, first, she's never been back to the house since those 7 days. And she's always been curious and asked her parents, and they never told her about the house at all. Told her if the book was actually true, if it was, if that's something that they experienced, because she no longer remembered. And they would never tell her. So once he passed and she got the deed to the home, she went back to, her job is to renovate houses. So she went back to do that so she could sell it. And the book just tells her her time in that house, where she's kind of remembering some of the things that her father's book mentioned happened to her as a kid or happened to their family, and she's discovering the truth behind the house. And then the other chapters, so every other chapter is her story in this present day, and then the second chapter or the next chapter would be a chapter from the book that her father wrote, which I thought was pretty cool. It's a lot of stories or a lot of books where you read about a book being famous in that story's world, but you don't actually get to read the infamous book from that story. And in this case, you actually get to read the book that was written by the father, because those were the chapters.
Yeah, so you've got the book within a book, but the book's actually there.
Book session.
Yeah, I always find it like I think an author I follow put something on there. It's just like, what do you mean my genius character who's come up with this amazing way to get out of their problems? I have to come up with the amazing genius idea that they've come up with. And it's like sometimes you can do a lot of reading about a book telling you how excellent this other, I suppose, song or book or other piece of work is inside of it, but then I suppose the author needs to then be talented enough to execute that as well, because if it's not in there, there's a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, and it's good when they can sort of balance the two.
Yeah, and I think he decided to just go with I'll just write both books and that'll be that.
Sounds like, I mean, that sounds like the best way to do it. I don't think I'd ever be able to write about a book unless it actually, like, maybe there
existed.
Yeah, I mean, do you think maybe, I mean, from reading it, it's okay if you don't know. Do you think maybe one book came before the other, or maybe they were both wrote concurrently? Is there a lot of sort of threads? It'd be interesting to just see what the process would be like that for a writer.
Well, actually, I don't know, but that is a good question, because the way that the story goes is she's hit the father's book goes from day one into the house, moving, well, no, not moving in, but like viewing the house before you make a purchase, hearing the offer, and you get to see the father's take on the realtor telling them about the house and how it has interesting history and could tell that they're leaving things out. And then they go from day one, day two, all the way until they flee the house for, according to him, ghost. Mm-hmm. And the stories are interwoven, because as we read the chapters from the father's book, the Maggie's story or her day within the house has reflections upon that. So in one of the parts, she finds a photo of herself without a scar, and then she recalls in the father's book the same, like there was a date on the photo, and according to the book, she should have had a scar because of a ghost did something to her. And it's like, oh, okay. And then we go to the next chapter and we see what she's saying the ghost did to her according to her father.
Wow, that sounds really spooky.
I would think, though, that he had to write the father's book first, so that he can maybe go back and say, go back and kind of intertwine Maggie's story into her father's book. So he's like, okay, so in chapter 2 of the father's book, there's this picture. So in the previous chapter for Maggie, we're going to have her find the picture, type of thing.
Giving me kind of American Horror Story kind of vibes, because I always remember the first season of American Horror Story where they're looking around the house and again, stories being left out. It's just like, oh yeah, no. So the reason why it's not sold is someone died here. It's just like, really, someone, just the one. Just you use the word one.
Someone.
Yeah, that's pretty much how that scene played out. Very not so much as a lie, but definitely omission.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, someone, not some people, definitely not anything really dark or sinister. No, none of that.
I'm just happy in California, you are obligated to tell people if somebody died in the house. You can't withhold that information here.
Yeah, that's
like that.
Yeah, that's good. That's always good.
Let it be my decision.
Oh, I see. I'm not superstitious, and I actually don't really So I always say I don't believe in ghosts. I feel like I need to touch something. I say I'm not superstitious, but okay, I say I don't believe in ghosts. She
Yet
says,
you want to knock on wood.
yeah, she says filming this in the dark in her relatively empty house, because she's just waiting to have something sneak up on her webcam. But
I'll tell you if there's something behind you. Don't worry.
yeah, but I honestly don't know if I was confronted with like, oh, this house is amazing and this and this, but murders happened here or people died or people say it's haunted. I don't know if I would be brave enough to actually um get the house, because I don't know. I feel like the only reason I don't believe in ghosts is because I've not been given any reason to, but I don't really want
But
to
you don't
tempt
want to get,
fate.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
I definitely wouldn't move into a house that has like a murder has occurred there because of that. Just the energy stays.
Yeah, no.
You believe in ghosts or whatever. It's just reality is that energies are all around us. So if there's a murder, I feel like that energy would linger, and I don't want that in my house.
I think some places just have a they have a bad vibe.
Yes, yes.
I inspect a lot of different kinds of buildings and stuff for my work, and there are some buildings that from the outside look quite spooky, I suppose, but generally you walk around and it's fine. But I've gone into some, I mean, like houses, like big sort of manor houses type things, or I suppose buildings, and I don't know, you get a vibe, and I'm
Like
just
you
like
have to look over your shoulder.
yeah, and it's like if there's sometimes if a door closes behind me because it's got like a mechanism on, I'm not gonna like jump because I'm used to it. But there are some times that, I mean, I was I was inspecting a site like last week, and the door sort of clicked and sort of shuddered because the hinges were kind of dodgy, but I was on my own and I was not very happy. I had to do a quick stroll outside in the sunshine to
How dare the door close?
it was just one of those things where just like, you know what, this room is giving me a bad vibe. And I find when you go to some place like historical places that
Yeah.
have quite well known bad histories, I think when you walk around them you can feel it.
Yes. It's not, I believe it. It's not out of this world to feel like somebody would feel the energy or the bad vibes.
That's why I think if I was looking at a house or looking at any property, I don't know if I want to be told it had a bad history or if anyone died there.
What?
Like, let me live in the house or go. Well, I guess it's different
And
with
then
the house
what?
because you have a mortgage or you sign.
I was just gonna say, you pay so much money and then regret your life. No, you have to
that's the thing though, because it's like if I can get like a month trial or something, they have those on houses, because if I don't want to know, because if I go in knowing that something bad happened, then it's going to be on my mind to look out for everything, even the door creaking or the floorboards, and I need to go in there with just like a blank mind and just do what I normally do. And then if something weird happens, or if I'm just getting bad vibes, then I'll be like, okay, I don't know if I can stay here. And then I'm like, oh yeah, 20 people died here. Well, that's why I need a 30-day trial.
It's not Netflix account. You can't do that.
No,
it's not. But
maybe houses should have that.
It just never seems to go well in all the movies.
Yes.
When they buy the houses that have got the bad history, it just doesn't end well.
Well, to be fair, a lot of those characters are pretty stupid and they follow the noise.
Yeah, that too, definitely that too. I mean, I think my first sort of, I don't even think you could seriously call it a scary or like horror movie with a straight face, but it was The Others with Nicole Kidman.
I love that movie.
I remember I was quite young when I watched it, and I was like thrown for a loop when the twist comes out at the end.
Yeah, it's the best. Well, that one and Sixth Sense, I believe, have the best ending.
Oh yeah, Sixth Sense was good.
Yeah, the Sixth Sense and The Others. The Others is an amazing, phenomenal movie, and it is a horror movie. It's very, very, very scary, but also very beautifully written.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Lalig. So yes, as promised at the beginning of the episode, that is the end of part 1 for this one with Mary Lalig from Book Shrine Podcast. You can find them where all good podcasts are found: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all those good places. And you can also find them on social media at Bookshrine on Instagram and at thebook_shrine on Twitter. So go check them out in the meantime and catch the second part of their episode in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Bye.